Hi, friends. Welcome again. I'm Shankar Hemadi from Blue Horizons, and we are talking about what's happening in technology beyond the clouds, edge to edge transformation. And with me is one of the gurus of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Besides having spent years mastering the technology and applying it even into many vertical domains. So, Tej Anand, tell us a little bit about you. Where did you end up in this field? What are your interests? Just we want our audience to know who you are.
Well, thank you, Shankar. It's very nice to be with you. And I started in this field in 1985. My graduate work was in AI, and my work was focused in coming up with knowledge representations and inference mechanism so that we could reason with uncertain information. So I did that work in the late 80s, and then I went on to work at Philips Research, where I worked on building knowledge-based systems to diagnose CAT scan machines, and pivoted from there to doing model-based reasoning. And at some point, I moved to using AI to understand data. And the data I worked on understanding was market research data. So I would help brand managers and category managers in companies such as Procter and Gamble, Lipton, Coke, understand how their brands were doing compared to other brands. And believe it or not, our AI in 1991 generated 1 page of text, natural language text, graphs, and tables to help a brand manager understand what they were doing. And it embarrasses me right now, but we were very proud of that work. And we thought we were dealing with large amounts of data, even though the data we were dealing with was less than a terabyte. So, but in those days, that seemed like large. So that was kind of my work. And we then kept applying that work to other industries. We applied it to telecommunications, to financial services, to railroads, and eventually to healthcare.
So, Tej, you mentioned healthcare, and I know that you've made a big difference in the lives of a lot of people. Can you tell us about the kind of things you did in healthcare?
So I'll kind of focus you on. So I spent about 15 years of my career in healthcare, and again, most of the time we are applying AI to make healthcare more efficient and make healthcare work for people. So in the first place, we were working on understanding drug spend, pharmacy spend, and we realized that 5% of people are responsible for 50% of all the drug spend. In medicine, this is now called the 5-50 rule, where you'll find 5% of people contributing 50%. And what we realized was these 5% of people had more than one chronic condition, and 80% of them had diabetes. So our quest became preventing people from getting that second chronic condition. So once they came to us with one chronic condition, we used AI to understand how they could manage that condition. We call that understanding their gaps in care, having pharmacists engage with these patients and help them stabilize their condition. Obviously, the pharmacists can't prescribe anything, but the pharmacists were able to interact with their doctors and help improve their overall care. So that was like a big piece of work we did. The second piece of work we did was we used genetic tests to understand when we needed to deviate from evidence-based guidelines. And then the last piece we did in healthcare was help people who are getting discharged from hospitals to get the most appropriate discharge plan and have most of their care be at home. Because our research told us that people are happier at home. You spend the least amount of money on healthcare when you're at home. and your outcomes are the best when you're at home. So we used AI to come up with a discharge plan that people could use to make sure they stayed on track after they were discharged from the hospital and didn't have to go back. So that's kind of some of the work we did.
And I remember you also did some work on personalized medicine, something about understanding the genotype and stuff like that. Tell us about it and what role did these newer technologies like AI play in that?
So obviously, most of what we're doing is using AI, and we have to be very cognizant of the fact that AI as a technology changes a lot. So in the late 80s, we thought rule-based systems and knowledge-based systems were going to revolutionize the world. And then we eventually understood that they could only work in narrow problem sets and they had limitations. So at that point, we pivoted to saying, hey, you know what? We know so much about the physics of how things work. So maybe we should be building models. And then the knowledge base is working on top of the model. So we pivoted to model based reasoning. Well, at that point, we saw limitations from that approach because not everybody agreed with how things worked. So we said, maybe we need to use case based reasoning because most of our reasoning happens through experience. So we see this to be the history of AI, where we discover a technique. When we discover it, we find it to have immense potential, world changing potential. And it actually does. But then we hit against its limitations. And we then stop talking about that technology, but that technology continues. So knowledge based systems are used all the time today. They're used when you go to your self checkout counter, there is knowledge based systems happening. When people are doing security, there are knowledge based systems processing the log data. So we just take that for granted. Then the next phase was, oh, maybe we can just learn stuff. We have data, we can just come up with models. Well, eventually we hit up against the limitations of those techniques. Now, that doesn't mean those techniques have gone away. We're still using a lot of supervised and unsupervised and reinforcement learning to do a lot more things better than we were doing. But then we hit against the limit, and then we came up with deep learning. So we said, oh my God, this is deep learning is great. And we are not, and I think the current upswing in AI is driven by deep learning since about 2012. And we haven't yet hit the limits, but we will, if history is any guide. And of course, the newest fad is generative AI, and it's going to change the world. And it is going to change the world. But we are already talking about what it can and cannot do. And at some point, it will just become another tool in our tool belt. And those who know how to use the tool will do well. Those who can't will not do as well. And we'll continue until we hit the next thing. And then we'll say, that's the thing that's going to change the world. So that is the journey AI is on, and it's going to be on. I just have lived with it too long to get too enamored by one thing. I know it's important, but I know it will hit its limits. And then we will look for the next thing. So that's kind of what I think.
That's wonderful. In fact, Tej, I remember you mentioned how using AI, you were able to predict efficacy in certain populations and not in certain populations. Tell us about that and how medicine is really getting personalized in some cases.
So obviously, the kind of precision and personalized medicine we are talking about now has many, many facets. I worked on a very small subset of that. So there are certain drugs based on evidence-based guidelines people are prescribed. So if you're recovering from breast cancer and you don't want to have a relapse or a recurrence, most often doctors are going to prescribe tamoxifen to you. Now, there are certain genetic markers that patients have that are indicative of tamoxifen not working for you. Now, if you have those genetic markers and you haven't been tested for the genetic markers, then you could be taking tamoxifen thinking you're okay, but you're not, because tamoxifen doesn't have efficacy for you. So we would understand the genetic markups of those patients, and then get the doctors to prescribe other medication. In some cases, these patients would do better on ACEs and ACE ARB inhibitor and things like that. Similarly, we could use genetic markers to help doctors uh, do a do a faster titration for blood thinners, such as warfarin and Coumadin. So again, AI is a part and parcel of all of this, but it's not necessarily the AI that we might be most excited about right now. But it's all the AI that has been in our toolkit since the 80s.
Wow. And as you know, I spent a lot of time working on AI in the chip industry. We've seen these kinds of things, and we are marching along. Generative AI is adding a lot more to our arsenal. But what I find fascinating about your work, Tej, is how much it applies to people in their day-to-day lives. I recall there was a time when you were working on books for children. Was it Golden Books? Was that the one? Tell
Yeah,
us about it and how it influenced your own children in the whole process.
I worked at Golden Books in the late 90s. I think I was there in 1998. And the best part about working there was my children were little then. My oldest was 2.5 years old, and my youngest was a few months old. And Golden Books makes books for very young kids, like children less than 4 years old or 6 years old. And in Golden Books, we at that time we used to make new product every week, and every Thursday we came out with new product. And as an executive, I got free samples of the new product. So every Thursday, I came home loaded with gifts for my children. And for that brief period of time, I was the best dad in the whole wide world. The other thing I remember about my Golden Books days was, Shankar, you might not know this, but most people have a favorite Golden Book. I don't know why, but they do. So I would travel, and I used to have a credit card that had the Golden Books logo on it. So I'll be checking into a hotel, and I'll put my credit card out, and someone will go, "Oh my God, you work at Golden Books?" I would say, "Yes." And they invariably have a story. "Oh, my favorite book is The Ice Cream Man or Nurse Nancy." And by the way, most of these books from the older days, we would not consider appropriate now in the way they represent gender and race. And most of these books are out of print. So this individual would tell me, "Oh, but I can't find the book. I would love to show that book to my children." So I would take his email address. I would come back to New York. Our offices were in New York, and our archive library was in Racine, Wisconsin. So I would call our archivist in Racine and say, "Do you have this book?" And she would laugh and say, "Tej, we have every Golden Book. Of course we have the book." So she would then pull the book out for me, and we would digitize them.
Wow.
We would digitize the book, and we would make it available on our website. And I would send an email to this person saying, "Well, I can't get you a print copy of your book, but I've digitized it. You can go here and you can show it to your kids." So I don't know. I think I hope I made lots of people happy by giving them their favorite Golden Books, even though they were out of print. So
you're not only a best dad, you become best uncle to I don't know how many children.
for a
So
short period of time.
yeah, recently you co-authored a book on blockchain, and tell me how this segues into all that you've been working on, and what do you see are the possibilities?
So one of the things I saw when I was in healthcare was that a lot of healthcare work is driven by clinical factors. And I felt there was a lot of impact you could have in healthcare by just improving the administration of healthcare, by making data more available and more transparent. And I looked at blockchain as a way of making data more available. So I kind of feel like I call these the 3 R's of inefficiency in healthcare, which is redundant work, rework, and reconciliation work. And I thought blockchain is a great way of dealing with those 3 redundancies. So since I started working on that, and then I wanted to share all of that with everyone, so I wrote the book. So that was kind of my driver for writing the book, and it's been a great experience.